had 2 weeks vacation while I was working, and I didn't have enough money to go anyplace, so they just sent me up the lake. And you can take care of Buddy while you're up here and cook for him. And so Buddy and then his friend Huey Moeller, what was his name?
Yeah,
Vic Moeller.
Vic Moeller.
Vic Moeller.
Well, those two would be up
Huey.
here. And they were just a riot. And of course I never knew what they were doing or anything, and I could have cared less because I just sat around and read books all the time and went swimming. But anyway, Buddy had this dog. What was the dog? I forget what it was, but it was a little bulldog. And the best thing it did was pass gas. And it would always follow Buddy no matter where he went. Well, it would always go down to the grocery store with him. Well, Broderick was kind of a sourpuss. He never liked the kids anyway, and he didn't like to have Buddy and Vic come in there because the two would act so silly, you know. Well, then the dog would come in there with him all the time. Finally, Broderick said to him one day, "Buddy, I don't want that dog in this grocery store anymore. He's always pissing on the peaches, and I don't want to hear it." I tell you. For a long, long time after that, that was a don't piss on the peaches.
They say that from your youth, you have things that you remember by ideas or scenes, but the fact is that your senses take up things more deeply than anything else. You're very basic, like smell.
Yeah.
Now, the old store there had a wonderful smell to it, which you wouldn't tolerate in any grocery store today, because they sold gasoline.
Yeah.
They sold motor gas on the end. They had a gasoline pump outside for automobiles, and they sold motor gas for your boats inside the store.
Mm-hmm.
And with every sale, they would leak probably a quarter of a gallon on the floor. It permeated the floor. This boat motor gas, and the way I can remember that store is the heavenly smell of this gasoline infected floor. Then you could just walk 10 feet from there and you could buy a chocolate bar. I mean, those were the sensations of your youth. And it's the sensations like that people actually remember more than anything else.
Yeah.
It's the smells of things and things like that that are the deepest things. See, like my own, to make a reflection. Since I moved so far away from here, but John would remember when he came back, like after a long interval, he would say, "I know it's Lake James. It smells like Lake James. It has a certain smell to it." Now, I don't think that was a natural smell. I don't think that that's as strong as it used to be, and I think that's largely because of the boats.
Mm-hmm.
The boats have taken away. I talked before about the natural part of the lake. The nature of the weeds and the reeds and all that, which I think that's what gave this unique flavor that you can even smell to Lake James. And I must say myself that I don't think that's really there that strong anymore. I'm not trying to say, well, the old times are not here anymore, but I really think that's true. Because when John called me just a week ago, he says, "Does it still smell like James?" Now, if I could make an aside, one of America's greatest essayists was E.B. White. Who wrote the New Yorker and great magazines for everywhere from 1920 to 1970. He was probably our greatest essayist. And he wrote one essay which I was so moved by that I had to make copies of it and send it to both John and Carol, because he wrote about how when he was a boy, at about the first decade of this century, like 1900, 1910, his dad, who worked in New York City, every summer would pack up the family and put him on a train and take him to the state of Maine to a lake. And he did it for 10 more years in a row. He would never fail to do it with his family when E.B. White was a little boy. So in the about 1940s, E.B. White took his son back to this same lake. And he wrote about, with so beautiful way only he could write, about how many things had changed. Now they came there in their cars. Now they had some motels and people had built homes there. When he used to come there in the train, people in the farmhouses around there would house you. And they would pick you up at the train station and take you to a place and they would feed you. You didn't have to do anything. You just spent your time total vacation. And these people in the farmhouse, they made their living that way in the summer. But the main thing I want to mention is that E.B. White mentioned that when he did come back after, and the time interval between when he went there as a boy and when he brought his boy there was almost the same time interval by when I came here as a boy and I brought my kids as little boys here. So it was very parallel. And there's a paragraph in his essay about returning to the lake where every detail he mentions is almost precisely the same as the things that John mentioned about the lake. He says, it smells like the lake. And there are certain things that are exactly the same. And I said, yeah, those things are the same. It seems they'll never leave. But I just still think that it doesn't smell like James Hicks anymore. I think so that's really gone. Yeah. There's too much oil in the water. And, too much oil in the water. And it burns away this old natural flavor. Well, I we think we're all worn out from this.
I forget just exactly what year it was, but it had to be before. It had to be in the 20s.
Well, it was about. I think the Pokagon was built about 28, 29.
I think before.
It was before the Depression because my feeling.
Mort.
Or maybe right about Mort's time, because I think it was. I had the feeling that it was built with the great boom of the 1920s, and it finally was just built about in the crash, you know. But that's the feeling I had.
But part of it was the CCC camps. That's the way they got the thing started. That was built by the CCCs.
Oh,
the hotel was?
Yeah.
The hotel?
The park itself.
The park.
Yeah,
the park, but not the hotel.
Not the hotel itself.
I mean, the CCC didn't start until 1933 or 34.
Yeah, I know. Well, I remember when it first started, we were up here at the lake, and Mr. Brademeyer was hired by the hotel management over there, which was probably the state, you know, the DNR place, you know, and Department of Natural Resources. Anyway, they had hired him to teach a class on biology, you know, botany and so forth. And so what they had planned were these hikes through the woods, which they still have over there. Well, he lived down in one of the cottages down the line here. And of course, they didn't have that many people coming to the hotel yet, and they wanted to have groups for these hikes, you know. So they garnered all of the kids from this whole side of the lake here.
Which was a lot.
Elsie Scheinman was in on it, and all the Bishing kids and the gig lines down there, and the Messmans and whatever else was down there that lived down there. And besides that were these people that lived, this friend of mother's that lived way over in over there across from Souls Bay. Searches, yeah.
Excuse
the
me.
two Searche kids. And so they'd all come over here and meet at our house. And then we'd take we took the front path a lot of times. There used to be a front path that went all the way down to Glen Eyre. And then we'd walk through there, and there was a place we could get through the swamp area and go over into the park.
Now, did they have boards through the swamp area?
Yeah, I can't quite remember what that was like, but I remember we had to be very, very careful. When Bob and I were little, we used to go down there, you know, in a boat. And you see, you got to remember, there are no cottages around. The whole place is clear and free. There are a few cottages, but not that many. And anyone that was in any of those cottages, like the Warenbergs and the Helmkes down there, we knew all those people anyway. They all lived on Madison Street in Fort Wayne. So you never felt that you were not around somebody that you didn't know.
Yeah.
And you never felt like you were trespassing, and no one ever told you to get off your property. But there was a path right in front of the cottages here, and that was kind of fun because right there on top of that cliff, the path was very narrow. And it was always kind of fun because you had to grab a hold of one tree to get around it so you wouldn't slide down into the lake because, you know, it just went down straight. And then some which way we got around that swamp area and over into Pokagon. But we walked that every day. Then we went on the hike. And Mr. Brademeyer talked about it. And I learned a lot, you know, about the different trees. And that's about the same kind of thing they do now. And we'd come home. Well, we did that for weeks. All of us kids. I'd go over there and go to the park and then come back.
Now, was it the same hike? Or did he teach
Well,
different
he would
stuff?
take us on hiking. Maybe that day he'd talk about the birds because he was also a bird man. So.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, they were very, very interesting. But they were using us because we made the crowd, see? Well, we got so that we kind of felt like we owned the place, you know, and especially Buddy Gallmeyer because they had ping pong tables over there, and he and Vic Muller would go over and play ping pong all the time.
But Dolly, would you mean that these nature groups
Yeah,
were as late as
yeah.
after the hotel was built and all
Yeah,
that?
yeah, the hotel was there. Yeah, and we.
I mean,
Yeah, we'd go over there.
I can imagine that being done by the DNR because the park was there earlier. I mean, the park was Pokagon Park was already established as a nature place.
Yeah, nature center, and then they built the hotel. Now that hotel wasn't that large, but it.
I know it wasn't that large.
But
yeah.
it was a beautiful, beautiful place, and they had a lovely, lovely gift store in there. I just loved to go in there, and of course, they never looked at us because we were always pretty dirty. I mean, we never had really very good clothes on. We only had like 2 outfits, you know, and sometimes we were clean, sometimes.
I had one outfit, like one khaki suit I wore the whole time we were here.
Yeah,
One khaki suit, and every Saturday I would go swimming in that khaki suit and wash it. And I put my swimming suit on, I would hang the khaki suit in the line, then I'd put it on again. That's all I had to like. One khaki suit.
Well,
2 pieces.
Buddy Gallmeyer, then, he always got so dark, you know, from the sun. And he didn't have to be out in the sun, you know, 2 days, and he was just black practically. And he never did wash too much.
They did wash it anyway.
So he didn't see why he should